All right, ready? I don't care about your feelings.
That was so odd. You'd be left of Lenin.
I can't believe you said that. Oh, jeez.
You have no power here.
What? Just two brothers.
It's just two brothers.
Where are we on this whole comparison of Animal Farm to today's current events?
Well, I mean, you've read George Orwell. So have I. A lot of people think that he was really prophetic. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but I think he seems prophetic to us today because he was so in tune with what was happening with the Soviet Union. And that just kind of seems prophetic to us today. So a lot of people talk about 1984, but what we're talking about today is Animal Farm. And the perverse story of the twisted rise of communism in the Soviet Union.
So I think part of the reason why it comes across as being prophetic is because history repeats itself. This book was written in 1944. You know, by that time the Bolsheviks had overthrown the government in Russia. You know, they had the whole, you know, it was all divided up with kings and queens and royalty and that whole type of government, and the people overthrew that, similar to what they did in France, except it was maybe even a little bit more extreme. Their good buddy Lenin was the guy in control at the time until you know, he passed on, and that torch got passed to just a wonderful leader, Joseph Stalin, who did some just great things, like everybody would want to have, you know, communism done not quite right, I would suspect. I'm being facetious. Communism is never done right. There is no way to do it correctly. But that's the basis of the story. That's how it appears to be prophetic, because it's just history repeating itself. You know, they replace this government, they replace the government in Russia, and then ultimately they ended up with something that was as bad or probably worse. I would suspect worse. You know, and that's where we are. That's how he came to that. How that the origin of the story for people, for those of you in Portland.
Portland. You know, I think it's a great display of how oftentimes the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know, they're utopian theories that, you know, built on humanitarian grounds that might sound good on paper, when they meet the hard tar of reality that humans are imperfect beings and we're inherently flawed creatures. And when you try and mix the two, I mean, it's like mixing water and oil. And eventually the results are, you know, often condemn you to a worse form of hell than you originally had, which is exactly what you were kind of saying. In this book, we see this play out with the pigs, which were kind of considered the ruling class of Animal Farm, aka the Soviet Union. When after the revolution, the animals, led by the pigs, mind you, start making the rules that all the animals must follow, called the 7 Commandments of Animalism. And the rules kind of went like this. It said it's 7 Commandments of Animalism. Rule number 1, whatever goes on 2 legs is enemy. Rule number 2, whatever goes on 4 legs is or has wings is friend. 3, no animal shall wear clothes. 4, no animal shall sleep in a bed. 5, no animal shall drink alcohol. 6, no animal shall kill any other animal. And 7, all animals are created equal. So, for them, I'm sure that sounded good on paper. Again, idealistic standards. But, you know, what is one man's tool is another man's weapon. And we see this play out because over time, the pigs, which were the upper crust elite, slowly change every single one of the commandments to their own benefit until the rules are completely unrecognizable. And so by the end of the book, those rules change from 7 commandments of animalism to the 5 commandments of animalism. And it went like this. 1, 4 legs good, 2 legs better. 2, no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. 3, no animal shall drink alcohol to excess. 4, no animal shall kill any other animal without cause. 5, no animal, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
So some animals are a little more equitable.
Yeah.
I think
equitable
is what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where that word was at the time that George Orwell wrote it, but he should have put it right in there, because that's exactly what he's talking about. We're talking about equity, in a sense. You know, and it's kind of funny, because eventually the pigs became mirror images of the masters, aka the humans, that the pigs thought they had rid themselves of. You know, and by the end of the book, the pigs were walking on 2 legs, coming out and just erasing rules and changing them. And the sheep would all be sitting there clapping. And all the other animals were looking around. And no one said anything until the pigs eventually got up, went back in the house, and by that time, the time to say something was too late. And the book even ends with pigs and humans looking back at each other, and no one could tell which was which.
The example that he's giving there is you had the aristocracy. They overthrew the aristocracy because, you know, it had all the problems that aristocracies have and continue to have even today, the few that are left. And it was easy to get people on board to overthrow that. And ultimately, you know, as the story goes, as the story is told, you get to where they were in 1944. And that was with Joseph Stalin and the people going to the gulags who didn't agree with everything. And that's the comparison that's made, is nobody said anything until it was too late. And we'll develop that a little bit farther as the story goes along here, and we make some comparisons. And you know, at one time, the sheep almost become kind of the instigators of support in the book. I don't think the fact that the sheep were the animal that he used to express that was by accident. Neither do I think that the pigs were an accident for the ones to become the oppressive leaders that they despised so much. And those reflections will through time, I believe this book will be prophetic, not just in the U.S., but it's also showing that it's reflecting what's happening in other countries as well, and some more than others. It is also kind of this. It's kind of a cautionary tale too of, you know, be careful what you wish for, or be careful. You know, the grass is always greener. And to me, I guess the way that I look at it, as it has a lot to do with always fight for your principles, which goes back to why I always say that I'm not a fan of negotiations. I'm not a fan of compromises, and this is it when it in reference to politics. I don't believe that compromise is a good thing. It seems to only benefit one side here in the United States, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the hard left does not do compromise, and we're going to talk about some of that coming up here in a second. So, if you haven't read Animal Farm, I highly recommend picking up a copy and giving it a read. You're gonna, I think, if you've been paying attention to anything that's been going on in American society, you're gonna start to hear Twilight music in the back of your head as you read the book. And you know, I think the question that we want to ask ourselves is, how did the animals, or how could the animals let it get to that point? You hear that question so much with so many different things. You know, when we talk about like Nazi Germany, when we talk about the Stalinist Russia, when we talk about Maoist China, the question always seems to come up, oh, how did the citizens let it get to that point? Well, I think Animal Farm did a pretty good job at kind of showing that. And I think we need to keep on asking ourselves that question. So throughout this episode, I implore you to ask the question, how did the animals let it get to that point? And I think you'll see a theme as we go in our show.
All right, so